As a head teacher, you're the person that needs to decide what's getting done and what's not getting done. And the difficulty is there are so many needs, and the needs of our children are raising, in my opinion, exponentially, but the funding isn't.
Hello, my name's Jenna. I'm an online primary tutor, and today I'm talking to Deb, who used to be a head teacher, about how to quit teaching and become an author. If you are a head teacher who has left teaching, let me know down in the comments down below. Thanks so much for joining me today, Deb. It's lovely to have you.
Thanks, Jenna. Good to talk to you.
So we got in touch on kind of like a group post on Facebook, and it was just through another conversation, and you reached out to me, and it was lovely, and I was really interested because you're the first person I've spoken to who has gone on to become an author, which is
Yeah.
fantastic, and I can't wait to hear about that. But before we move on to that, we'll obviously talk about your teaching journey first and then your transition. So did you always want to go into teaching? Was it meant for you from the beginning?
Definitely.
Oh.
So I when I was about 15, I think it was about 15, a group of girls and I at school did a media studies project, and we created books for children that were in reception. And we went into a couple of local primary schools to ask the children what they wanted the books to look like, and we learned so much from the children. And it was pretty much from then really that I thought I think I want to be a teacher. I love this. Strangely, at that time the children were only in reception, and I actually became, although I know we qualify from age 4 to 11, I actually really got keen on teaching year 6, but that evolved. That really evolved. I originally wanted to teach children in reception, and I did teach all across the year groups over a 25-year career. But it started when I was only young at 15, and I absolutely loved it.
And how was your teaching career, going from reception all the way up to year 6? Which classes did you prefer? Which classes, not that you didn't like, but not your cup of tea, maybe? So how was your career in general up to the
Funny,
point
isn't it,
of
how we
you
do
said?
get that happens, doesn't it, to us? It's funny, really. I think we all sort of find our little place where we feel we belong in education. And I started off my career in Sheffield. I trained in Sheffield, started my career in Sheffield. I moved to Newcastle. I taught in Newcastle, central Newcastle, a place called Westerhope, for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. Loved it. I absolutely loved it there. My husband's a Geordie, by the way, that's the connection. And then from Newcastle, we moved back down to Manchester, and I worked in central schools for a while, quite a long time, and then moved to the suburbs of Greater Manchester. And so I did a sort of almost like a triangle, I think, is a way to describe it. I taught in every year group. I eventually got into year 6. And I have to say, it wasn't a year group that I'd chosen. The head teacher that I worked with chose the year group for me. And I think that does happen, doesn't it? Head teachers move people around, and I actually absolutely loved it and didn't think I
Oh,
would.
wow.
I thought I was going to hate it, but I actually loved it. And strangely, I did a few years in year 6, and then I went from year 6 back down to reception and nursery. And the reception, I remember a couple of the children in year 6, who those children are in their early 30s now. One or two of them keep in touch with me. And I remember one of them saying, "Oh, you can't go to reception, you might scare them." um, but of course, it's a completely different skill that we need. And yeah, I absolutely loved it, teaching. It was a wonderful job.
And it's funny how when someone in charge tells you to do something, and initially you're like, no, that is not for me. What are you doing? But they can sometimes see something that you can't see at the time. And obviously that head teacher knew that it was right for you. And obviously you loved it. And it is a totally different skill set. I remember one of my previous head teachers saying that it happened to her. She had to go from year 6 down to reception. And she really panicked to begin with. She was like, what on earth am I doing? What am I going to do with these children? But you, like you say, you learn and you adapt, and that, you know, you go with it. So for those that don't know what a primary head teacher is and what that role involves, can you explain what that is, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's a really tricky question. There is so much to headship behind the scenes that I think even teams don't realize what's going on and what it's like. There are so many challenges in headship. For example, you're the sort of face of the school, so it's very important that you're high profile. And I think that for me, being in all the places all the time was quite challenging. So you were expected to be, you know, very visual in the school, but very visual outside of the school. There's so many different challenges that come your way, and I think the biggest one for me was the school budgets, and I think definitely the most challenging as a head teacher, that, but it had been challenging throughout my career. The financial side of schools is incredibly difficult to explain to people. There are so many needs in school, and as a head teacher, you're the person that needs to decide what's getting done and what's not getting done. And the difficulty is there are so many needs, and the needs of our children are raising, in my opinion, exponentially, but the funding isn't. And consequently, there are some things that can't happen that you want to happen. And that is incredibly frustrating.
Mm.
So for example, in my opinion, there are some challenges at the moment in terms of how many staff you might have in school, whether or not you are able to keep all the staff that you might need, but don't necessarily have the funding for. And so those are really challenging situations for school head teachers. But there's all sorts of others, the expectations of parents, sometimes a lack of expectation from parents. Sometimes there is an expectation that we offer a curriculum that is outside of the working day, and that puts a strain on a staffing team that might already be wearing thin. There's only so much we can do as teachers, and I think teachers are expected to do such a lot, and
Mm.
yet then there's that expectation that they're available after school as well. Um,
Mm.
yeah, there's so many things. I think one of the things I'll talk to you about in terms of my author story is there is a lot of loss to deal with as a head teacher. You know, the loss of a parent by death, or some school head teachers talk to me about the death of children, or members of staff, and that is incredibly difficult to deal with.
Mm.
And I don't think that there are mechanisms within our schools, even within the system, to deal with those massive challenges that come our way. I've head teacher colleagues of mine who have talked about having to deal with things that they didn't expect would come up. You know, they're unexpected challenges, and we're expected to just have the answers. So that's it's a massive job, headship. And if there are any head teachers listening to this, I just hope that they are okay, and that if they're not okay, they have someone they can reach out to.
I have had friends that were head teachers in the past or currently, and you know, they have spoken to me about reaching out for professional help because there is so much to put onto one person's shoulder.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I remember when Ofsted came and there were some of our Ofsteds that didn't go well, and the first person's job that is on the line is the head teacher. You know, I don't really understand the system personally. Like, you'd think, right, the school's not doing great, why don't we offer support to that head teacher? But for some reason, the answer is they go. And initially they might stay, but then often they just go. And it is really sad because those heads do want to do the best for their school, but there's not much support in that way. So obviously there's a lot to the job, but what for you were the elements that you really enjoyed, you know, with the children possibly, all those parents that were really supportive, because there are many parents that are very, very supportive in schools. So there are many difficulties with the job, but in your opinion, what were the positives as well?
I absolutely loved it. And the children that I worked with were absolutely delightful in every school I've ever worked in. Almost all of the parents are absolutely fantastic. They, as you've just said, most parents want the best for their children. And
Mm,
and sometimes that means that there needs to be a little bit of challenge, and
mm,
that's okay. And I think it's how you take that and what you do with it, really.
yeah,
Some of the really lovely things about headship is that when something goes incredibly well, and it doesn't have to be something massive, you know. I remember delivering an assembly to the children, and it was all about positive psychology and how we can look after each other, and it's okay to not always be okay. It's some days we don't always want to get up and go to school in the morning. You know, we're feeling a bit tired, or we're really struggling. That end of term thing where everybody's starting to really feel it and getting really tired. And I was talking to the children about how we can keep going, and all that positive psychology, being grateful and lots of gratitude. And one of the children had brought me a smile, a little picture of a smile on the back of an envelope, and was
oh,
super excited about bringing it to me. And I'll never forget it, and I've still got it. And it was all about she said to me, she came up, she said, "Mrs. Brown, this is for you. If you put it in your pocket, whenever you feel like you don't want to come to school some days, and everybody feels like that sometimes, whenever you feel like that, just get it out of your pocket, and that smile will make you smile, and then you'll feel better." And I just, you know, those are the little, I miss that. Those little things that the
yeah,
children say and do,
yeah,
they're just absolutely adorable. So yeah, there's loads of wonderful things. Think these special events with, you know, the big massive special events that we do. I miss that type of thing, and that sense of community and togetherness. I think a lot of head teachers are still in the job for that. I think they
definitely.
realise that, you know, that sense of community, that sense of that young person who wasn't doing particularly well at something, but now they're absolutely flying because of what the teacher has said or done. You know, those are the special moments that
Yeah.
we do need to keep real tight grip of, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And especially like what you said about on the envelope, like those moments where they've just got a random piece of paper, picked it up from somewhere. It's not that pretty, perfect little decoration, and they've seen that you're not having the best day, and they've just brought that to you, and you think, oh,
Yes.
that's so nice.
Yeah.
That's so nice. It's
Or just recognize that, you know what, it's not always perfect for me either. You know, that understanding from, I think the child was only 5 at the time, you know, just that understanding that actually to pass that smile on is going to cheer people up. It's just incredible, really. And I think there's a lot of those moments happen in schools every day, but we're all so busy and a little bit frazzled in education that we don't always spot them and notice them.
Mm, yeah.
So it's just about grabbing hold of them, I think, for those people who are still in the education system. It's just about keeping hold of those really lovely moments.
Yeah, I used to find it with, you'd have your assessment points, but there'd be a child that'd come in and they couldn't even speak. And then by the end of the year, they were maybe speaking in very simple sentences, but like that really didn't register on the assessment progress charts. But for that child, it was just incredible. And it wasn't recognized. And it was so frustrating at times because you just wanted, you obviously praised the child, you spoke to the parents, but formally in education, it just wasn't recognised. And we expect every child to reach the same point, but no human being's the same. So then, how long were you a head teacher for?
I think it was about 7 years.
And what at one point did you start to think, this isn't for me?
you know, it's a good question, and I don't think it worked out like that. It was sort of a flip side of that, really, and maybe that's one of the things I might mention to your listeners. I am also a grief recovery method specialist,
Oh,
and I qualified as a grief recovery method specialist way back in 2018 after the death of my mum in 2013 and my sister died in 2016.
oh, that's so
And
sad.
I looked into loss. I was in deep grief at the time. And so I started to research grief, loss, and what we do about it, and looked at how we support children, because there was a real understanding developed from me that actually there's not much in education to support children who are dealing with loss. So I started to look into that and started to research. I actually started writing a book. Although I say right, it took me ages because obviously as head teacher I'd already working a lot of hours. So it was years actually. And I did get to a good 50, 60,000 words. And then I realised, because I also deliver a course called Helping Children with Loss. And every time I deliver that course, people say to me, have you got any resources? And the course Helping Children with Loss is a grief recovery method course. And I also deliver some of my own training. And so I thought, you know what, no one's going to want to buy this book that I've written, this 50, 60,000 words. Practitioners don't want to read that much, they've got time. So I started to think about what resources I could create for children. And that's the reason why I eventually became an author, because I started writing journals for children. And
Oh,
I started with, and it's unbelievable where this has taken me, but well, not so, maybe unbelievable is too negative a word. It's incredible where this journey has taken me. But the first one we published is When Parents Separate, and it's an activity
oh,
book for the children that sort of gives them an okay. You know what? It's okay to feel rubbish about this. Here we go. That's the page.
oh, lovely.
The pages. So, and they're designed so that the children can colour them in, and they're designed to be quite matter of fact. So, we're not skirting around the issue of mum and dad are separating, and it might not be particularly nice. It might be that mum's got to move out of the family home, or dad's got to move out of the family home, or in some cases the family home is being sold and everyone's moving out. So, this book is about giving children an opportunity to write down how they're feeling about what's happening. And so, for example, how I'm feeling about towards my dad. And there's a questionnaire for dad, did you ever love my mum? And why are you splitting up with my mum? And will we ever be able to do things together again? And these are all the sorts of questions that children really worry about. They really sit and ponder and get concerned about what's the future going to look like for me, and what's happening, and where will I live, and what will happen if I've got to move house, will I have to move school, and if I have to move school, what about my friends? And so they end up in a lot of turmoil. So we talk about special memories together, when we were all together as a family, what was it like? Um, what's it like now? How is it going to change? All those sorts of things. And there's a couple of colouring in pages along the way as mindfulness type exercises.
Mm.
So that was the first one that I created.
Was that after you left, or was that
That's
while you were
before I
still
left.
there?
That was gosh, August, a year ago. Are we in
Mm.
August? We're in August last year. So that was had started, and I'd started to write these books. And so what also then happened, my dad became quite unwell. So I'd already lost my mum and I'd already lost my sister, and then my dad had a cancer diagnosis,
Oh,
and that was a bit of a moment for us as a family. And then I wasn't very well either, and I just needed to stop and just think, you know what, hang on a minute, what's happening here? And I almost feel like I've been sort of putting out this message to the universe. I like writing these books. I'm really into it. And I almost feel like it's happened for a reason. Everything has happened for a reason. And so I did leave the world of education at Christmas, and after a period of time where I took some rest and spent some time looking after my dad, being able to take him into hospital and just spend some time making sure he was okay. As we started to write more books, and we're now 5 in. So
Oh,
this
wow.
5, I know. The second one is all about when a loved one dies by suicide.
Yeah.
So we are not shying away from very difficult topics. And the reason for that is very simple. I feel very strongly that difficult topics happen.
Mm.
And when difficult topics happen, the children are often left to get on with it because the adults also don't have the support or the skills to offer that support to the children. So everybody's sort of in a freeze mode when bereavements and losses occur that affect our lives. And so this was the second book that I created. The third book that I created was sort of dedicated to my lovely dog, Jasper, who died in 2018, and we loved him so
Oh.
much. And so this was our pet loss journal. We've since changed the colours, so this was our what we call our author copy. We've since changed the monster is purple,
Mm.
and the background's all purple, and that's now also published. And that's about when a pet dies.
Mm.
So this is called our Lessons in Loss series. And then the more recent publications are when a loved one is seriously ill. So that's because my sister was very, very ill for 18 months before she eventually died by cryptogenic liver failure. And we had a lot of journeys to and from the hospital. It was horrendous. And I really felt for my own children, who had to come to the hospital with us sometimes. My daughter describes missing her dance classes sometimes. She eventually actually decided to quit dance because she wanted to be with me. And the only way at the time of my sister's illness, the only way for her to be with me was to come to the hospital. Otherwise, she wasn't going to get to see me. And so I think we have to accept that when people are very, very ill and you've got family members in a seriously ill or a terminally ill situation, the children's lives change significantly. And so what is there out there for them to offer that little bit of comfort and support? So that's what we're in the middle of. We're in the middle of sort of creating journals for as many different losses as possible. We're almost finished with when a grandparent dies,
Mm.
and that's the next one out. And we've started to write the I suppose to teachers, this would be called the lesson plans, although I would prefer to not call them lesson plans. They're more of a sessional guide. So we've started writing the adult support guides, and that is the first one. It actually only arrived yesterday, so isn't that strange?
Could we have a little look at
Yeah, so
inside
I'll
of one of
show
the
you.
pages?
This one's in colour because, of
Oh.
course, the children's ones are not in colour because the whole idea is that they get to colour it in. Whereas the adults haven't got any, they don't need to do that. It's all about supporting them. So there's lots of content. There's all the content pages. This is the one for when a loved one dies by suicide. And so I'll show you a lesson plan actually. So the idea is that the child doesn't necessarily need help with every single aspect of the journal. They're supposed to be able to do some of it independently, but there might be a couple of the sessions where the child wants some adult support. So that's what these guides are about. So, for example, we've sectioned the journals recently, so we have updated them all since these, and we've sectioned them all into 4 different sections. What the first section is all about, feelings and emotions. So, how do they feel about what's happened? The second section is all that's the feelings and emotions bit. So you can see their feelings and emotions. So
Okay.
journal, that's what's there. And then the lessons are there to sort of support them. Can you see that sort of?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've dragged in the format is that I've dragged in, they're the pages of the journal. So the adult that's supporting just knows which pages. They don't have to faff about searching through. And then in the second section of the journal, we've done it in a different colour. And that's all about talking and memories. So that's about really, really teaching the adults that, you know what, somebody's died, or a relationship has broke down, or a pet has died, or somebody's really ill in hospital, but it's okay to talk about that situation. In fact, it's really good to talk about that situation, even the really not nice bits. And so in there, we've then, there's an example of a lesson plan. So we've got it's okay to talk about your loved one who has died, the lesson plan there and what you do about it, what some help for the adult. And I'm even making some sort of packs, cards and things to help the adult.
That's really good.
Yeah, so that's not out yet.
And how are you going to promote that to schools?
That's a good question. So excitingly, we have been very lucky and been recently successful in a grant bid for a research and development. So in September, I'll soon be going around some schools, speaking to some children, taking in the journals. So the children will get a journal and a colouring pack of pencils, and get the opportunity to go off and do some of the activities in the journals, and then come back and tell me how they got on, what they thought was good, any tips that they think might improve it, what they thought maybe needs to come out, all that sort of thing. And the adult support guide will also take into schools and ask some adults to give it a whirl, go through it with some children, see how useful it is, and again get their feedback. So that's very exciting stuff. That's why I was saying very early in our conversation, it's actually quite incredible how far I've come in 6 or 7 months. It's quite incredible how
It's
far.
amazing, really, how
Yeah,
much you've done.
absolutely. I'm
Yeah,
not doing it on my own, by the way. I do have another person helping me. My brother is a genius.
ah,
In the graphic design world, and he is sort of helping me to learn a little bit more about the graphic design. I put the content in mostly, and he does the graphics mostly, and then we sort of help each other along the way. So yeah, we are very lucky. I've also got some really wonderful colleagues, former colleagues, who are also a massive support. So yeah, we're doing great.
oh, that's lovely. I think that'll be really good because I can remember back to when I first started as a nursery teacher, and my experience was in nursery. And even then, I worked with children where their parents are splitting up. And it was devastating for them. They were so confused, they didn't understand it, and we didn't really have the training as professionals to support them. And then in more recent years, with my tutoring business, I've supported families where a child has been extremely poorly. And again, the family, the children have needed support to deal with it. So I like the way you've zoned in, because we used to have a program called Jigsaw in schools. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Yeah, we had it, yeah.
But this one seems more focused and more zoned in on actual events that children can actually relate to and are unfortunately going through, but that's life, obviously.
Yes.
It's life, you go through tragedy. But for children, it's obviously going to give them the tools and everything involved to hopefully not get over it, but be able to deal with it in a child-friendly and child-appropriate way.
Yeah.
So it sounds really, really good. I really
Yeah.
trust. That's really good.
So
And Oh,
It's interesting really how things come about. So if there's
mm,
anybody listening to this that's thinking, you know what, I've had enough of this job, I don't want to be in it anymore, and I really get that. There's a lot, it's so tricky. Working in education at the moment is incredibly challenging. And for anybody who's doing it and loving it, thank goodness for you guys. Keep going. We're so grateful to those
mm,
people. But if there's anybody who's really struggling with working, my advice is really simple. You got to get clear on what you want.
mm,
Because if you don't know what you want, opportunities can't arrive for you. And
mm,
for me, because I'd started writing these journals, it's incredible really how many opportunities have sort of come my way because of that. And it's like I was supposed to be doing this. This is what I was supposed, and I really do think that you sometimes you've got to be, for those people who are thinking, oh, I can't leave, I need to do this, and I need to, because we think that we need to do something. And I, I thought that, my dad getting ill, and things that sort of came along weren't really on the radar, but they sort of made the big difference in terms of, you know what, I had to press pause, and that was incredibly important. I needed to press pause,
mm.
and it's unbelievable what that's done for me, really.
I think for many years, especially when I was growing up, it was very much you went to school, you went to college or university, you got a job, and once you're in that job, especially with teaching, I worked with people that were in teaching for years in the same school for years. It wasn't the norm to go on to something else, and you can feel stuck, and you
True.
can feel like I'm not happy anymore, but I don't know what's next. I don't know what to do next. And like you say, you do need something to focus your energy on, because if you do come out and there's nothing, you kind of get a bit lost. And I've seen it happen online. People have gone back straight away to teaching and they've ended up in a worse situation because they've just gone back to what they think they know. So it is good to have a clear goal
Yeah,
in mind. Now, for you, goals wise, do you have any future goals for your business?
absolutely, lots of them.
Lovely.
So as I said, I'm in the middle of when a grandparent dies. This particular series is aimed at children aged 7 to 11. We have another 5 journals at least in this particular Lessons in Loss series. When we have completed those, we will move on to a different age group. And so, yeah, we've got absolutely loads to do yet in terms of this. We're really still in the early stages, even though 5 journals are published, we're still in the early stages of the plan. We also have a package going through CPD, what's called a CPD accreditation. So our training will hopefully at some point be accredited and rolled out so that the training goes hand in hand with the journals, and we can
That's
teach
incredible. Well done.
how
Congratulations, I mean.
how 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 do we support our young people, and what simple quick fixes can we make to be able to support all of the children in our schools, but then what can we do for those specific losses to enable children, as you said earlier. I'm glad you said it's not about getting over it, it's about getting through it, because we can't go over it, we can't go under it, we have to go through it. And
If
that's
you
the
know,
way.
you know that story.
Absolutely. My child, my youngest, my daughter was so obsessed with that book. I think I could read it without books. So we have to accept that with loss and grief, there's only one way, and that's through it. And so how do we enable our young children to get through it? And I really believe that a lot of the issues that we're seeing in our schools in terms of behaviour um, and dysregulation is to do with the loss in their lives. And I think that there's not enough looking back at what has happened to that young person in order to work out what we can do going forward.
And we also, on a bigger scale, we're having quite huge tragedies in our country recently. Obviously, with the attack on the children at the dance centre with Taylor Swift music. And so children, in particular that area, will have lost their friends and coming back to school. That's another way of that schools will have to support children with loss and grief, and that is on a huge scale.
Yes.
You know, the country has been grieving for those families, for what's happened to those children. So it is around us. It's not something you can just ignore, because
Agreed.
it's children's futures. We want them to be able to succeed in life. Now, where can we find you? So you told us everything that you're currently offering, but where can we find you on social media?
Two places that are probably the best at the moment. We're in the middle of updating our website, but it'll still be called lessonsinloss.com. So www.lessonsinloss.com. That hopefully will get better and better. It's going to be brilliant, and hopefully there'll be a place where people can even buy the journals from there eventually and book the training. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. I do a lot of sharing on LinkedIn about where I'm up to with the journals. I also share some of my frustrations on LinkedIn about how things are going. It's not all hunky-dory. But yeah, it's so for example, Jenna, I'm now in my office. It's absolutely tiny. But for the first 5 months, I was pretty much living downstairs in the dining room. Everything was spread out all over the place, absolute chaos. And that's just the way it is, isn't it? So I've now got a little tiny office where I can come and have Zoom meetings in quiet and private. Otherwise, you can hear that in the kitchen, you could hear the of the coffee maker.
That's a lockdown times.
Yeah, so it's a little bit better. We've had no interruptions, which is brilliant. So yeah, setting up your own business is not easy, but it is very exciting and enjoyable. And once you know what you want, it's incredible how I've done that word lots of times. I notice how many opportunities come our way once you're clear, and you've got to keep writing it down. And if you're not sure what you want to do, write down what you like doing in terms of your hobbies. Write down what you enjoy in terms of your values. You know, what sort of person are you? Write all that down. Get clear. Write down what you don't want. Get that written down in a book. Buy a journal. Get that written down in a book. You know, I don't like this. I love doing that. Get that message out there. And you'd be so surprised how quickly changes can start to happen. But do get ready for a little bit of resistance. It doesn't always just happen straight away and nice and easily. One of those, yeah, like you said, a few heads and teachers have left and ended up going back. And you know, get really, really clear on what it is that you do want to do in order for those opportunities to arrive.
Yeah, and maybe also kind of look around at what's happening, because obviously you went through your experiences, and even though they were horrific to go through, it was your next stepping stone.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're so overwhelmed at work, you can't think straight. So it is trying to find that space and be like, right, okay, I know I'm not happy, but what is my next step? How am I going to find a way out? And once you're a bit clearer, like you say, then things do come up, and people are really kind, especially in, you know, ex-teachers, ex-heads that have left, because they know what it's like to be in a stressful environment.
Yeah.
Especially starting a business, that's stressful as well, like you said.
Yeah. I mean, if there's any heads out there that just want to call, just to offload, yeah, to find me on LinkedIn. I'm still on Deborah Brown, not Deb Brown. But yeah, I am findable if anybody wants a conversation. I really do. I feel for leaders at the moment in education.
It's a tough job.
It's a tough job, and they are incredible people.
They are. It's human beings at the end of the day. It's a lot on their shoulders.
So much into it, so much. I know a lot of heads, and I don't know any head that isn't giving absolutely everything they've got. So yeah, it's a challenging job, but it's very enjoyable at times, but very challenging. But yeah, it's just not for me at the moment. I've got a new vibe and a new set of things that I need to get through. I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'll leave all your details down below, but it's been an absolute privilege to talk to you. And thank you again. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks so much, Jenna. It's been great chatting to you. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Well, if you liked today's video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see who else I'm chatting to, and make sure to check out all of the details down below. Thanks for watching.